a tearjerker, I don't know what is. I do hope there are 113 of the voting machines in this room. If you have left it downstairs in the dining room, please go there very quickly to get it. There's always one. And as Taff has just said, that recording, is that not perhaps the first Storybook Wings? And so it's nothing new, is it? So as we return for our afternoon session, and I very much hope to have some positive and real interaction during the questioning periods, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage our Secretary General, Mr. Nick Bunting, to give us his presentation on 2017 and the future. Nick Bunting.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for that warm welcome. I think what you might also be pleased to know about the young lady in the video is that she's in a care home, and the matron there says that this whole experience has brought back many memories of her life and her husband, and it's really enriched her as a person, and they believe this will add many years to her life because she's suddenly got this focus back. And for me, that's the sort of thing that we ought to be talking about. That's changing people's lives right at the coalface. I'd like to talk to you about 2017 and some of the things we're going to talk about for the future, and also touch on some of the points that the Chairman of Council raised earlier through the presentation. In the best traditions, it might be death by PowerPoint, but hopefully you'll get the breadth of what we're trying to do as an organisation and the scale of the challenge that the Council has set me and the team to deliver on your behalf. Our starting point for everything is our vision and mission. And our vision talks about ensuring that those who have served, their sacrifice doesn't result in loneliness, poverty or suffering. And I think it's important that we remember that as we move forward, because what we're trying to do is promote the welfare by charitable means of the RAF family. And that's the key thing at the end of the day we're trying to do. And we've just seen a fantastic example of one of the ways in which we've done that. However, this is really important as well to all of us, because without you, the members, we wouldn't have an organisation. And as the chair spoke, we were in terminal decline. 4 years ago, 58,000 members of the association, losing 10 to 12,000 members every 3 years. Doesn't take long to add the maths up about the direction of travel. And there you can see that line going straight down and starting to speed up as it got on. From that peak of 100,000 back in the year 2000, which is why the council, in a sense, have given me this fantastic challenge to not just to reach 100,000, but to sustain the membership at 100,000 by the time we get to 2030. But as you'll see in 2017, we've continued that rise, and that's moved up to 72,000 as of the 31st of December, I should say 2017. It's always good when you read your slides later, isn't it? But the important bit there is that 25,772 members. And in fact, we've already recruited this year over 3,500 members. So if you put that together, that's nearly 29,000 members we've recruited in 4 years. Remember, 4 years ago, we only had 58,000, and we've recruited almost 29,000 since then. So that's more than 50% of the membership we've grown it by. Think about it, how much work that has been. But we've still got great opportunities in 2018 in the centenary of the Air Force to drive that membership. So again, I would like to put out from the stage, please, that challenge to everybody here. Can every one of you please recruit a new member? And can everybody that you know please recruit a new member? Because if only 10,000 of us recruited a new member this year, that would be a massive boost to all the other work that the team are doing to drive that membership. And that's what we've got to be trying to do. The other thing that that means to us, of course, is now nearly 36% of the membership are relatively new to the association and, as the chairman pointed out, different needs and requirements of the association. And our job as the team is to recognise the breadth from the 18-year-old to the 109-year-old, and what do we need to sustain all of those people and not just a small part of it. And as you see there, maybe we've already got the low-hanging fruit in terms of the numbers, and membership is going to be a key focus for us for years to come, and it will be a difficult task. So I would ask again, that personal challenge. I've recruited my one this week. Hopefully you'll all do your one this week as well. Because as we see from the membership age group, where when I joined, remember, the membership was off to that right-hand side, that 75 plus membership, national service, Second World War members, that's where the peak was, and then it just drifted down as we went younger and younger. Well, we've started to turn that around now, and as you see, we have more members in age 26 to 30 than any other age group of the association. And I suppose one of those myths are we're just filling the association with associate members. Well, essentially, 82% of the association have served. 82% have served in this fantastic Royal Air Force that we all support. But the 18% that haven't are in many cases the ones that are keeping alive the branches today. They're the ones that are supporting the branches, taking on the officer roles, taking on those important tasks of welfare and fundraising. And I met a wonderful couple for the first time last night whose son is in the Air Force, and they have taken on the chairmanship and the secretaryship of their local branch, and they have inveigled friends to join and make sure they're supporting and driving that branch forward for all of those veterans in their community. And it's because their son is serving. And they're a really important part of the future of the association. But we are not going out and targeting those people wholly. We are trying to grow the association from the 1.5 million in the RAF family. But of course, that serving element's really important to us as well. And as you'll see from this graph, back in 2004, we only had about 4,000 members that paid through Give As You Earn, or JPA, as the light blue might know it. That was appalling, really, when you think about it, only 4,000. And we've grown that now to over 19,000 members of the serving RAF are members of the association. So I can confidently say to everybody serving here, when you're asking people to join the association, they're now in the minority within the Air Force. And Dell and the team have got a target to take us to 80% there. Because we should be the organisation that the Air Force want to join because of the work we do, because of our ethos. And it's really important that we continue to support our serving members and we welcome them into our branches and clubs. And although John touched on young people not being welcome, we have had experiences where branches and branch clubs have not welcomed serving persons into the branch and branch club. And I would ask everybody here to reflect on that and consider if they know that's happened and to do something about it, because that's really unacceptable. Our primary method of communication to our members is airmail. And each quarter we produce over 55,000 copies. But again, because we recognise there are different people in our organisation, we produce the Connect magazine for the serving, and we produce that with different stories that focus on the serving population. And the star of the show is in the room, I think, so please get a signed copy of Connect later. He's brought some with him specially. I think Air Marshal Julian touched on RF 100 and the importance of working together. And it's with real pleasure that I welcome David, the controller of the Benevolent Fund here, and his contribution to our work on welfare and the joint venture is really important, and I would like everybody to thank David for his support of the association. But it's also important to recognise that we've also joined with the Charitable Trust and with the museum and with the Air Force itself. And just a little snippet of some of the things that Marshal Gillian talked about going forward. There are some dates to think about if you've not already signed up or got yourself involved. There are many things coming up through the year. Please engage with RF 100 and really participate and support. There is a static aircraft tour across 8 cities across the UK, and we are doing a collection at every one of them for the joint venture to raise money for the RAF 100 appeal, and volunteers are all gratefully accepted and welcomed on each of those. We're also supporting the schools project, and that's about the STEM agenda, science, technology, engineering and mathematics that again Air Marshal talked about earlier. But as you know, tomorrow we're having our own event at the National Memorial Arboretum, and we'll be towards the right-hand side of that picture, which is the main memorial where we'll be acting tomorrow. I just wanted to cover off broadly what's happening so that you've got a clear understanding, but it will be a drumhead ceremony. There will be a dedication of the stones and crosses later by the chaplain-in-chief and our president. We will have a fly past. There is a fantastic opportunity for standard bearers to stand around the main memorial, and I believe the number's now over 70 standard bearers that are going to participate, and there'll be some teas and coffees afterwards. We have got over 2,500 people coming, so I would ask you, particularly those here, to register tonight, and let's get that out of the way. And then that's 500 people we've pre-registered. You'll get your wristband. Please don't treat it like the voting devices and leave them downstairs in your rooms, because you haven't got your wristband, you won't get in. The other thing is the service is outside, it's not inside. We do have a partial wet weather protection, but if it rains, please don't put umbrellas up because nobody will be able to see. So we are praying for good weather tomorrow, and the forecast looks good. So we should have a really great day. As you know, on the 1st of April, the RAF was formed. And there's a great picture of our president and the chief of the air staff signing a rededication of the Royal Air Force to the Royal Air Forces Association. And this is the third time that the Air Force has dedicated itself to the association and what we are trying to achieve. It was first done in 1974, it was done again 25 years ago, and it was done again on the 1st of April this year. And I think that really says how much the Air Force Board and the senior leadership team of the Air Force recognise the work that we're doing and want to support us. And after my presentation, the dedication will be outside, so please go and have a look at it and see what it says, and then it will be hung in H quarters at Atlas House. I just wanted to move on now to welfare, to talk about the breadth of the welfare activities that we're doing. What we've seen is this steady increase in our welfare. Now, there are many reasons for it, some of which are because we're doing a better job of awareness and of membership, and therefore people know they're coming towards us. And we've seen a steady but inexorable rise in soft welfare activities. So let's talk about a few of these. And the chairman touched on the word volunteers. And we have to look at lots of volunteers who are both members of the association and not. So we've already trained in 2017 360 new befrienders. That's delivering around 14,500 befriender hours a year. We've also brought in 400 caseworkers, and we did 115,000 contacts in 2017, and didn't quite, but almost almonised £2 million of other people's monies, particularly David, so again, thank you. I always like to spend other people's money, as you know, to deliver that welfare service and support members of the RAF family. And as I say, not all of our volunteers are members of the association. Some are members of the Air Force. And I thought it would be just important for you to realise that actually our cause does stir other people to come and help us. It isn't just because they're a member. And in fact, these two volunteers have gone on to become members of the association. But that isn't why they volunteered in the first place. They volunteered to do the welfare work that the association does so well. The 3 hotels, 2,500 people visited last year. The buses drove for nearly 37,500 miles, taking them on trips, events and outings. And we served just over 13,500 breakfasts. But I think the last line's quite interesting. Those are people attending our hotels that have used the Wi-Fi. So this stereotype that the much older veteran doesn't use technology, we need to think about. So our investment of putting Wi-Fi into the hotels, which was thought a bit odd, actually says 1 in 5 of our guests are using the Wi-Fi. And when you go there and talk to them, they love it because they talk to their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren, and they're great FaceTime users. Might not be so good on the email, but they love FaceTime. And I think that's important that we recognise that generational change and shift. Our team down in Exeter has done another fantastic job this year, and they've worked really hard on the Armed Forces Compensation Scheme and war pensions, and we've seen again an increase in the number of cases that's come to us. Our success rate is hovering around 70%, so that's held up with the increase in the number of cases. But as you can see, the work that Chris Francis does there is really important to those people, and that's again another 500,000 plus that we've generated for members of the RAF family. Storybook Wings perennial. Neil Blewett, top recording volunteer. RAF Waddington, top station. Neil must have listened though to the Gruffalo thousands of times, and I commend him for keep going. But we had nearly 1,800 volunteer hours last year producing stories for young people to listen to their parents when they're deployed, and I think that's a fantastic story. Importantly though, what we've also provided is an increasing spectrum of Wi-Fi on units across the RAF sites, and now 56 sites have now got free Wi-Fi in. What we've also done is extend free Wi-Fi into the contact houses, so when those young people go and see their parent or other loved one that they've been isolated from, they're then not isolated from their friends and their community just because they've gone to see that parent. So by putting Wi-Fi into the contact houses, we've supported another 25,000 people who've used those contact houses during 2017 with that connectivity that they would expect if they're at home. Because as many of you will know, when you go onto a station, phone signal disappears as soon as you've stepped foot across the wire. I want you to touch on this because I think, again, some people forget that the association is the primary contract holder of the RAF Families Federation. And again, it's something we partner with the Benevolent Fund over, but we deliver this through our team, and they are a department of the association. And they've done a great job during 2017, raising with the Air Force Board, HQ Air Command, and with ministers over 500 issues through the year. And they've been really supportive of what the needs are of families and serving personnel in the Royal Air Force. We've also provided cash awards to a number of stations, and that supports them with a variety of things from small feeder stations through to bikes, through to rugby balls, footballs, and other things that they need to make sure that their life is actually improved in everything we can do. We've also piloted 2 courses, Mental Health First Aid Light on Benson and Valley. And what we've done there is not for the serving person, but for their families. And we've looked at how we can support their families by understanding the mental health issues that their partners may be facing. And by doing that, we've gained a better understanding of how to support the families on stations. And I'm pleased to say we'll be rolling that out in 2018 from those 3 pilots to over 40 programmes in 2018. What we also did towards the end of 2017 was run some pilot courses on Benson, Waddington and Valley to try and address a number of issues. The first one being the cost of childcare, the second one being the paucity of availability of childcare, and the third one was partner employment. So what we've done is we've partnered with a provider to train people to become childminders so that they can be employed and self-employed themselves, so they've got employment. We can increase capacity on those stations for childcare, and hopefully we can reduce some of the costs of childcare, which as families get posted from Lossiemouth to Benson and to Odium changes dramatically. And I can assure you the further south you go, the more expensive it is for your childcare. Your salary doesn't change, but your cost base do. And we're now just evaluating those programmes to see how we can extend and develop and deploy those. And the first initial reactions have been fantastic to those courses. But I think this is a key thing that we'd like to say to everybody here. Through that serving family, we've supported over 48,000 members of that serving family by all of the different initiatives that we've done. That's quite good, changed on its own. And that's a really important message for us, to make sure that we understand how important we are to all parts of the RAF family. We're not just focused on one slice of it. We've done that through promoting our services better, improving the awareness of what we're doing, and making sure people can pick up information about specific areas of our activity that are pertinent to them. And these are examples of the hard copies, but they've also been done in soft copies and also through social media. Those befriender courses are everywhere. So if you would like to be a befriender, whether you're in Elgin or Plymouth, we can support you in that process. And that has delivered 32 courses across last year, and 348 people attended those courses, and they're now delivering almost 4,000 hours of befriending. We also piloted, and we're in the process of piloting, the Wing Centre in Preston, on the High Street, in the old AFCAS offices. And what we've done there is some different things, and in fact the most popular event in the centre is Aircraft for Heroes, which is building model aircraft. And it's really brought people together and brought them in and started that dialogue around loneliness and isolation and comradeship and bringing them back together. And we've still got more work to evaluate whether or not it's really working for us across the realm, but we think the first signs are that this is a fantastic proposition and moving forward. And that's really supporting some of the other things that we're doing, and I'm not sure how many members even know we do Talking Airmail. And if you're hard of sight, we produce an audio version of Talking Airmail. I think the only downside is you get to listen to me every quarter reading out bits of it. But the other thing it does as well, not just that we look after those 110 beneficiaries for airmail, this programme partners with the RNIB so that we provide them with RNIB units that give them access to the RNIB's library of about 10,000 audio, magazines, books and programmes. And again, I'd like to pay tribute to the 150 volunteers, the 150 articles that we've done through the volunteers that drive Storybook Wings. And they've worked really hard to record these for us to make sure there are different voices for those recipients. I'd also like to do a big shout out to these branches where they have started breakfast and lunch clubs and are really reaching out into their local communities and bringing in not just necessarily light blue veterans, but veterans of all colours into the branches and the branch clubs and providing them with either breakfast or lunch on a monthly basis. And they're doing a fantastic outreach role and function, which really warms the community and makes the value of what the association does out to another group of people that we wouldn't necessarily touch. So thank you to all of the branches listed there, doing a fantastic job. Let's keep it going. Clearly, of course, we do work with other partners to make sure that we can make sure our skills are used in the right area, but we can deploy our resources to support people when we can't help them. An example of that is Alabare. We worked with them when we had a squadron leader found living rough in Bristol on the streets. Alabare brought him in to their facilities, a year-long programme before he was able to go and live independently. And after 2 years, he's now living independently and he's got a job again and he's back on his feet. He's off the streets. That's not our skill set, it's their skill set, but we could support that individual to go through that journey back to being integrated into society. I won't touch too much on this because we've just seen what a wonderful thing it is for our scholarships, but this is about how we thank the cadets and all of those who support us with Wings Week, and it's really important that we continue to do this and continue to outreach to the RAF Air Cadets and the squadrons there. But as the chairman talked about earlier, it's important that we generate the money to pay for all of that membership and welfare activity. And we've invested significant amounts as an organisation in those two areas, not just in cash, but also in recruiting people. And we've recruited almost 30 new staff to work in the membership and the welfare areas. And nearly all of those are in the field. The chairman talked about our financial position. And the thing I would like to reiterate to you as a charity and what we're trying to do organisationally is to make sure we generate that income, but equally we spend that income. So those red and green lines should generally be on top of each other all the time and moving in an upward direction so that we're generating the income, we're spending the income on that welfare and membership activity. But we do also have to spend money on raising that money. It doesn't just happen on its own. And the landscape has changed dramatically, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Wings Appeal, it's still the bedrock of what we do with the branches, and we raised 1.25 million last year. I'm hoping that we can get back to 1.5 million in RAF 100 and really capitalise on everything that we're doing through the centenary year. We've also changed how we operate RAF, and we've changed the product lines and how we operate that as a business. And you'll have seen downstairs things like EPOS on the tills downstairs, new lines. And what we've seen there through changing our e-commerce, that's our online shop, is growth of about 2,000% in the sales that we've seen in RAF since we changed the way in which we do things. We've also produced specialist fundraising packs to support those people that want to go out and raise money either on station through our very important RAFLO team or in the branches. So there is more support to you to do the work that you need to do to keep helping us generate that income. And if you want a bit of fun and run round and get paint thrown at you, and that's last year's date, I think it's the 9th of September this year at Wittering. There is also one at Waddington. Please do feel free to sign up and let people throw things at you. It's a really good day, and everybody seems to enjoy throwing things at me, so I don't know why that is. We also do strange things with lots of Santas, and in Lincoln we had, I think, about 750 Santas running. We also had a Santa run on the Falklands in the middle of what I thought was summer, but I had to remember that's their winter. So they were all celebrating winter, running around as Santa. So we can also have a bit of fun and enjoy ourselves while raising a bit of cash. Clearly, one of the mainstays of what we do is the air shows. They remain ever popular, and we will continue to support as many air shows as possible through the year and other events, particularly in this centenary year. And one of the things that we are also looking at is how we drive those city collections to support both the static air show and elsewhere. And we've got a target to raise £500,000 through those city collections off the joint venture. And this is driving forward, remembering that we get money back from the joint venture. So it's not completely altruistic. We do get some cash back to us as well. But if you feel you can volunteer locally at any one of those, please let us know, and Kate would be very happy to take your details. We're also supporting the Air Cadets and Marks and Spencer's to do a bag pack in 115 stores during the principal week of RAF 100. And this is a very unusual thing for us to be able to do. And Marks and Spencer's have shoehorned us into their programme. And again, we expect that to raise another £500,000 as well. And that'll be a fantastic activity for us for that week. We've changed the merchandise and we've driven that forward and are looking at it in a different way. And I would encourage you to buy your jam, because that's not just a nice PR exercise with the World War I aircraft. Wilkins are actually based next door to an old RFC airfield. And they have a fantastic collection of notes that were tossed out of the aircraft as the pilots flew over with their orders. Sadly and poignantly, they also have a small collection of notes of where people have dropped one to say that poor Bill died yesterday. Can you please cancel his order? So it's a fantastic link back to the Royal Air Force and to the Royal Flying Corps, and I would hope that you will be able to support this when it's out there in terms of the history that it shows. We still have this challenge that the Council have set us to achieve, to make sure our underlying income continues to grow, not just our top line income, but our underlying income as well, to that 15 million mark, which should enable us to fund where we expect the demand in welfare to keep growing too. So no easy challenge. Sustain 100,000 members and grow our income, grow our welfare. It's all easy really, isn't it? Thanks. That means that we are developing and expanding the way in which we communicate and we market to make sure that we raise the awareness of the public and of the area family into what we're doing. So social media is a really important part of our communications. And I would ask, could everybody in here that's got a Facebook account put their hand up, please? Quite a lot of you. Could you keep your hand up if you've got a link to the RAF Association's Facebook account? Far less of you. So could I ask everybody that hasn't got a link to the RAF Association's Facebook account, please put one on this weekend to promote what we're doing. Shall I do the same on Twitter? Who's got a Twitter account? Keep your hands up if you repost from ours. Well, very few of you. I think that's an example of how we need to integrate and the simple things that you can do to help us, to help you in what we're trying to achieve as an organisation, which is that welfare by charitable means. And as you see, our reach is pretty significant, but we need to grow it and extend it even further. We've also had, Sean I think has gone now, but Sean is doing Bertie the Bear. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure Bertie was here today and he'll be tweeted, but Bertie was on Breakfast TV and his whole programme of activity, and Sean is one of our befrienders, and the lovely young lady on his arm isn't his girlfriend, that's the lady he's befriending. And again, we've done this programme to support Harrier pilots. There's both him and Gary Waterfall. We're working hard to help the Harrier pilots, you know, become normal people, nice people, and integrate into the community.
It'll take some time.
Yeah. And as you saw, we were on the One Show earlier with that fantastic story about Rick and his music. And I think this is the way in which we're trying to make sure we extend our reach in the lowest cost option we can possibly do. Because when we start to look at how we work regionally, we get fantastic coverage by targeting regional media, press, radio and TV, with things that are of interest to them. And that means that we're able to reach, with the work that we did in 2017, almost 57 million people. That's a fantastic proportion of the population. So we've got to keep doing this to raise our awareness. Because if we were buying that kind of advertising, the experts tell us that would be worth about £4.5 million. That's what we would have to spend to get that. Now, we can't afford to spend that. We can only afford to spend that amount of money on our welfare activity. But to keep funding it, we need this sort of awareness. So everything you can do to put articles in the media will support the overall message. And we are all clearly supporting with social media the RF 100 appeal. And again, Del and Elsa and Molly have all brought pictures with them. They'll sign for you later as part of their approach. It's only £1 a signature, I believe, so they're doing their bit for the appeal. But because of the growth that we've seen in membership and in welfare, to keep funding it, we are going to have to increase our fundraising capabilities and the people that work in that team to be able to sustain that growth and reach that 15 million. Now, the chairman talked about the medium-term financial plan, and we've done a lot of work on planning the future finances of the association out to 2022. And we really understand what the implications are of the association out for another 5 years. And it's important that we do that so we can understand today what levers we need to pull today that will take a year or 18 months to start to kick in and work for us, and not wait until 2021 when we think we've got a problem the following year and try and do something about it then. Or even as we used to do, 2023 and try and recover. So we're trying to look much further ahead, plan ahead, and actually pull the right levers now to make sure that that continuing growth carries on into the future. So I know a number of you are always concerned about the members of staff that we have, but this is an important part of our long-term sustainability and survival, and has been thoroughly gone through by council on 3 different meetings to make sure that the plans, objectives and outcomes that we're anticipating are clearly articulated, and they will measure and scrutinise what we're doing to get us towards that journey. And we now need to make sure we invest across the organisation. So you will see some adverts for people in fundraising and marketing jobs come out in the media shortly. I want to touch on branches and build on the work that the chairman talked about earlier, if I may, and talk about the governance issues and journey that we're on. I think the chairman clearly articulated the recognition of the regulatory burden that's coming downstream. Every branch in the room predominantly is a micro charity. The average turnover of a branch is about £2,500 a year. It's not much. But you are subject to the same regulatory burden as the association is. Is it something you can really cope with? It's an interesting question. I can just remind you of what the chairman touched on. The Royal Charter simply incorporates the association as a legal entity. That's all it does, just incorporates the business. So like a limited liability company, that's an incorporated company, this all the Royal Charter does. And it's the oldest form of incorporation. But it doesn't do anything else than that, it just incorporates us. And as the chairman has said, we've been a charity almost since the initiation of the association back in 1930. There are some issues of being a charter body in that amendments have to go to the Privy Council and have to be agreed with the Queen, and changes to the rules also have to go to the Privy Council. So we're not agile in able to change our governing documents. There is quite a lengthy process to go through to do that. And you saw some of that with the changes we made in 2016 that we started in 2014. But the Charter doesn't absolve the association, areas, branches or members from compliance with any and all UK legislation and EU legislation. And the day we leave the EU, the withdrawal bill will put all of the EU legislation into UK legislation. So we won't get away with any of it. It will all come in. And in particular, for us, the Charity Act, Employment Act, Health and Safety just bound off the table for us. And these are the things that we have got to look at and see how we help you to do things to make sure that burden is lessened as far as we can, but you still have to comply with the law. And the law overrides the Charter, the rules, the bylaws, the regulations. You cannot ignore the laws of the land. So some simple challenges that we have. The 1056 is basically the list of the charity trustees. You have to do that by charity law. It has to be submitted to the Charity Commission on an annual basis. You have to complete your annual accounts. They have to be submitted on an annual basis. So by giving them to the association, we know we're there. And yet, in 2017, when we started the review of them, a third of all branches and branch clubs had not done either. Not acceptable, really, breaking the law. And we need to help you to make sure we do that. And people need to understand that the whole committee and the officers are trustees of the branch charity. You can't get away with it, you've got to be there. But equally, under the revision of the Charity Act in 2016, you have to be what's defined as a fit and proper person. Shall I move on? What that also does mean, and it's a conversation I'm having with the Charity Commission now, is because we are welfare charities and all of the council as trustees of the association have been DBS checked, the Charity Commission would quite like us to make sure that every branch committee member has a DBS check because you have an honorary welfare officer delivering welfare. And they do not care that the trustees of the branch are not delivering the welfare. They are the governing body of that branch which delivers welfare. And I'm trying to argue that that's potentially a bridge too far in the current structure. And I've spoken to the new Chief Executive of the Charity Commission. We haven't got anywhere yet, but I'm working on it. But that's the kind of issue that's being driven down. The Chairman touched about the Trustee Act of 2000 regarding many of the duties, but I would like to highlight the ones around investments. The Chairman talked about ordinary care. Well, actually, in this regard, it's imposed care. It tells you what you've got to do. It's not optional. So if you have any investments, which I hope in reality, many of you don't because you've put them in the branch deposit fund, there is a full range of things that you need to be complying with. You can't ignore it. It's written in the Act. And we need to, again, help you, but the simplest way of dealing with it is put the money in one of the 2 branch deposit funds. And if you're not aware, is that we have now 2 deposit funds, one which is slow and steady, that's the tortoise, where you're guaranteed to get your funds back, but you only get a 1% growth, or one where the hare will give you a 4% return, there or thereabouts, but it may go up and it may go down. We won't guarantee your return, but it's your choice about the level of risk you want to follow. The key thing that's coming out as well from all of the Charity Commission investigations is the conflict of interest issue. Conflicts of interest of doing stuff with your family, friends, children, brothers, sisters, and being on the club and the branch committee. You are completely conflicted, and your personal liability just magnifies, particularly if you've done something rather unfortunate, which I'll touch on shortly. GDPR and ICO, I think the chairman has covered significantly, but equally we are talking to the ICO about whether every branch needs to be registered with the Information Commissioner as a data controller. So we could be in a position where we've got to register you all. I'm not wishing to preempt your decisions later, but if you weren't independent charities and part of the association, the data controller is sat over there, and the data protection officer is sat over there, if you were inside the association legally. So, some of the do's and don'ts. It was raised with me that we're not very clear about what you should and shouldn't do, and some of the things that we've found going out and about and talking to branches and looking at branch accounts. So let me be quite clear. You should not ever make a loan to a member. There is no circumstance in which a branch should loan money to one of its members. Absolutely none. There is no circumstance in which a branch should loan money to a branch club. These are all in the governance documents, by the way. There is also no reason, and I've written out 2 areas on this, that you should make a cash payment to a Royal Air Force Air Cadet squadron. You should not make cash payments to squadrons. You can buy bursaries, you can buy them kits, you can do other things, but you shouldn't be giving them cash. You certainly should not be disposing of any property or assets because you probably don't own them. And we have had to talk to legal firms that advise branches that have not considered the charity aspect at all. HMRC changed its rules about honorariums about 5 years ago. If you make an honorarium, it's actually a salary, and it should be taxed. You should pay employers' national insurance, the employee should pay national insurance, you should auto-enroll in the pension scheme, and you should be paying a pension for that employee. Do not pay honoraria because the HMRC will come after you for all of those bits. And they've been very clear, particularly in the sports world, about chasing small sports clubs for that back tax. And remember, they can go 6 years into the past for the PAYE tax and the national insurance contributions, both the employees and the employers. Please do not make honoraria payments. I know it's common sense, but we still find it. Please don't have a single signature on any bank account. Preferably have at least 3, possibly 5, just in case somebody passes. Certainly have 3 on any account at any one time. Because if somebody dies, you're left with 1 signature and you can't operate the bank account. So please have 3. Don't think you can run a branch with 1 person doing the chair, the secretary, the treasurer's job. Again, doesn't work in charity law, doesn't work. And please, please, please don't let the club and the branch use the same bank account. Because the branch goes, I don't know where all our money's gone. Well, we know where it's gone. Yeah, these are just common sense, I hope, but these are things that we've found and are finding on a daily basis. Branches and welfares should have separate bank accounts, therefore different purposes. You get welfare money, charitable money to do welfare things. You get your membership rebate to look after running the branch. Different purposes, different reasons to do things. This is one of the best. Don't even think about extending a building without talking to us, but certainly please don't do it without planning permission. Don't build it without building control. And when it wobbles and almost falls over, don't be surprised if I shut the building on safety grounds. And if it's not actually attached to the main building. You know, little things like that are quite important, you know, generally. Branch clubs reporting the value of a property in their accounts. Branch clubs can't own it because they're an unincorporated association. The branches can't own it as an unincorporated association. It should either be in the association's name as a custodian trustee, preferably, or it should still be in trustees on behalf of a branch. And we have some branch property that's just in people's names, not even on behalf of a branch. But preferably, all property should be in the body corporate's name as the custodian trustee. If you're employing somebody behind the bar or as a bookkeeper, they need to have terms and conditions of employment, and you need to have the full spectrum of employment policies. Just because you've got one employee doesn't mean you can ignore employment law and all the other things that go with it. So if you've got a steward, bookkeeper, you've still got to comply. Please make sure you do that. I know it's easy. I know it's convenient. I know it helps from time to time. But under the new regulations, there's something called a serious incident reporting. And signing of a blank cheque in the Charity Commission's eyes should be reported to the Charity Commission as a serious incident. So I'm hoping that wasn't a cheque you were passing over there. The other thing is, if you sign a contract as a member of the committee, you are not signing that contract on behalf of the branch or the branch club because they're unincorporated associations. You are taking the personal liability for that lease or contract in your name. Do you all get that? Get it signed by the HQ as that custodian trustee. Otherwise, you take that personal liability. So when I've sat across the table from some members of a committee of a branch and asked them for their house keys and their car keys, I was being deadly serious. Because that's what will happen if it all goes wrong on some of these contracts. And I've got examples of where people have signed stuff in all good faith and have not understood the consequences. And we are now trying to dig them out of the mess with our legal teams to sort out stuff that they should never have done. Because they've done this. They've downloaded a lease from the internet and thought that was okay. Or they've gone to Staples and bought one off the shelf and thought that was okay. But of course, what they didn't do was take all the adjustments that you need in a proper lease to absolve yourself from the 1954 Act. So instead of giving a short hold tenancy, what they've given is an assured tenancy, which means you can't get them out. Doesn't matter what they do, it's almost impossible to get them out. Because we thought it was okay to download it. And it's a drop-down box. I mean, it's fantastic when you see these things. They're drop-down boxes, they look really good, but actually they're pants. Don't do it. Come and talk to Vicky and the team, because that's why we're here. Equally, going into a commercial relationship without doing any due diligence on the people you're thinking about having a relationship with. So much so, should I say this? We have examples where not just we're interested in the individuals, but the police are interested in the individuals. Because nobody thought to do any due diligence on whether they were a fit and proper person to be working in there. If a branch closes, you are still required to produce cessation accounts. You are still required to transfer the closing balances to the association, not to any other organisation in the association, but to the association, and provide the details of your bank and the balances. Common sense, I hope, but people are not doing it. Same again. Fire risk, fire safety compliance. Think Grenfell. Before you go out there and think of anything, think Grenfell. Have we done it? Have we done the electrical safety checks? Have we done our H&S assessments? Have we, where we go into a building or we own a building or a branch club, done regular fire alarm and evacuation checks? When was the last time you got everybody to leave the building as a test? Have you really done your annual gas safety certificates? Rhetorical question, because I know the answer is no. But if you really want to end up in court very quickly, fail on the next one. Food safety and hygiene. That's the quickest way to go to court. Screw that one up. So what we're going to do to help you, and we've done some of it today, we were doing some of it at the area conferences, and we'll do more of it, is financial training to make sure you understand how to report. And Andy, wherever he is about to produce a new financial handbook to replace that section of the old handbook with new templates of how you should be reporting, so everybody reports in the same way. Most of you just simply require an independent examiner to do your accounts. Could I say, though, that an independent person is not your brother or sister? Just because they're an accountant doesn't mean they're independent of you. We'll also be doing more charity governance training, and Vicky will be doing some of that, and we've also got an external support there. You will have seen issues around safeguarding, and we're going to do some more of that. We're going to keep on the GDPR programme, but we're going to have to create, to be compliant, a data sharing agreement between the association and our branches to comply with GDPR. So that will be coming downstream shortly for you as we move forward on GDPR. We will also be coming to talk to those branches where they've got a club and a building about formalising tenancy agreements to make sure it's really clear about everybody's responsibilities. Because if you've sublet that, often there is no clue as to what their responsibilities are. So we're going to regularise that. We've already put model employment contracts and policies on the website, so you can download them if you've got employees and use those. And Alison is available to support anybody in using those or any questions about them. We will also be making sure through a scrutiny process that you do complete all of your annual gas and other checks where appropriate. So the BSOs and the station officers will be following this up with branches, particularly around 1056s, annual accounts, data sharing, and anything else we need to do to be compliant and to operate with good governance and be in compliance with the laws of the land and our own governance documents. And Council determined last September that if you don't comply, you won't get your rebates until you do. So a little bit of carrot in the training and a little bit of stick from Council. And I think it's important to recognise that we want to support you to be compliant and we want to help you. And if you've got questions, first port of call is your BSO station officer and your area director. We're here to help you get through all of this because we recognise it's a huge burden that's coming downstream and stuff that we should have been doing for years, we have just not been doing. It's a bit like when I talked to you for the first time about data protection, and the Act was passed in 1996, implemented in 97, and I talked about it with you in 2013 for the first time. And it was, well, we haven't done it so far, do we need to? Well, we all know what the answer to that is. So what are the public saying? So you all remember what happened to Kids Co? President's Club, Oxfam, Royal National Institute of the Blind. So you've heard of those, haven't you? I bet you've not heard of Simner, Working Men's Hall and Institute. Thank you, Taff. My pronunciation expert on my left tells me it says differently. So why have I put them up there? So why have I put that one, the Working Men's Hall and Institute, on there? Because that's basically one of our branch clubs. What they are is exactly one of our branch clubs. The Charity Commission have been in and investigated them and ripped them to bits about non-compliance, not having documented evidence, having conflicts of interest, not having policies in place, not having their accounts sorted out, having a brother do the accounts, not somebody independent. Go and look it up on the website. City of Worcester Gymnastics Club. Why have I put that on then? Because guess what? That looks just like a branch without a branch club. Guess what they've been ripped apart for? Conflicts of interest, not documenting things, not having policies, safeguarding, finances. It's not just the big ones that the Charity Commission are looking at. It's the little ones as well. And we have to recognise we have one name, the Royal Air Forces Association. We have 400 branches that carry that name. We have one reputation. We lose that reputation and the rest is all gone. We have to really focus on that reputation, because without it, we won't raise the money, we won't attract the members, we won't deliver the welfare outputs that we want to do. Because when you ask people what they're saying, it's about how they achieve their goals is what's important now. It's not just doing good anymore. Doing good is yesterday's news. Governance is seen now as mission critical for all organisations. We have to govern well. We cannot discriminate against people. The chairman talked about being diverse. Well, we are misogynistic. I think that's the right way of doing it, isn't it? You'll tell me later. We do discriminate against people. We do it subconsciously. It's unconscious bias, and we need to address our behaviours. Cannot have that discrimination as an organisation. Remember, one reputation. That's all we've got. But I would like to come to a close by thanking all of the team that work for the association, because they do a brilliant job and they really support the organisation, its outputs, and you as individuals and you as members. And I'd personally like to thank them for everything they've done since we last met here in 2017. But there is another group of people that I would also like to thank for everything that they have done, despite the chairman's rant and my exposition of activity, and that's you. Without you, we wouldn't be here either. And it's without the membership and it's without our beneficiaries, there's no point in us being here. And you all do a fantastic job for the association and for the family. So can I ask you to thank yourselves for the contribution that you've made in the last year? And just as a final note, remember I talked about this last year, which the area chairman suggested that we move forward. I raised with conference and got you by acclaim to approve that we move forward to obtain a crest for the association. Well, I'm really pleased to be able to tell you that the Royal College of Arms have produced one, and the Queen has approved it, and we were presented with it by the Chief of the Air Staff on the 1st of April 2018, and we now have the association crest. And with the dedication, you can see the original outside on an easel for you to go and look at. Please go and help yourselves and look at that. And that will now start to go on to all of our material, promotion, printed, social, everything as we move forward. Finally, we are trying to lead the organisation. We are trying to bring a transformational change to the organisation. We are trying to build it on insight and evidence, and you'll see more of that later in the year. We are increasing our digital capability, and we are trying to build an efficient and effective organisation. Thank you very much.
Nick, thank you very much. That's seriously important stuff, and certainly we need to help ourselves so we don't fall foul of this. Also, if you want to get a good value tie, one of the old designs, get downstairs now, buy that stock up, because there'll be a new tie in 6 weeks' time with the new crest on it. Now, at this point, I would like to invite to the stage the chairman, the vice chairman, and our treasurer with Nick in assistance to answer your questions on the presentations that have been given by the treasurer, by the chairman, and of course by our secretary general, and that will then lead us through to the resolution. So please, the floor is now yours to ask questions. Please identify yourself, and when the microphone is brought to your hand, at that point speak. Thank you.
Tony Perryman, Huntingdon District Branch. A little while ago, our branch tried to find out what was happening about the membership rebate. We inquired from the office and were told that the rules had changed, and it now depended whether we had sent in our Form 1056 and our accounts, which we have, but there's still no sign of the rebate. Can you tell me what is happening?
Nick, could you answer that one, please?
Where's Del? Del? Yeah. Apparently he's run off with the rebate, Dallas. We got a microphone, Del?
Del Rowlands, Director of Membership. If your 1056 has been completed and submitted to the area office and everything's in order, that will then lead to the area director saying to the finance director, the rebate can now be released. So if that 1056 has been received and there's a specific branch inquiry, we can absolutely take that afterwards. But the 1056 needs to be received. That then leads to release of rebate. At that point, the rebate will be released.
Right, so that appears to me that there is a question specifically for this branch, if you could pursue that and then answer directly to the branch info.
We'll sweep it up
Secretary
after.
General. Thank you.
Yep.
Next.
Good afternoon, I'm Martin Tangen. I'm the chairman of the Armourers branch. We're a virtual branch and we have a strong interest in how you as the committee and the people running the organisation are going to look at the use of social media. At the moment, there isn't much regulation or governance around individual branches making use of social media. And certainly in our case, as we learned the hard way, this has caused some problems. Are you going to lay down some governance about how branches can use different types of social media and who controls that within a branch, particularly the name of the association?
Right, so I assume you mean council rather than committee, but
Sorry,
yeah,
yes.
okay.
My bad.
We're in the middle of it. You want to answer?
Yeah, if I can start, we spoke last night a little bit about this, and that our use of social media is something that is growing, and the Secretary General touched on that. We're not yet that good at it, and there have been other issues within the IT area that have been causing us concern. But as we've talked about today, as we begin to try and embrace the wider community, communicating with some of the younger generation, we have to become more savvy at it. But I think the point that you have raised about some of the gotchas that come with the use of social media, and if we don't have a policy in place, then we are going to trip up at some stage. And I think it would be of value in terms of what you're doing as a virtual branch. You are at the leading edge, or in fact, you and the other virtual branches, in terms of using social media, that you link up with our IE committee and ensure that we are communicating and learning the lessons, and hopefully that will help drive us in our thinking of putting a policy in place. I don't know whether you want to add anything on that.
No, I think it's absolutely right. We've been looking at that internally, and so we don't allow, we only allow 3 employees to communicate the association's message. That message may be agreed by others, but it's only 3 people that have got access to the channels. And we've also learnt some lessons on that, I can assure you. So I think we will be developing a policy for branches. We can't prescribe who in a branch can do things because you're, in a sense, independent charities. If you're inside the association, slightly different opportunities. But we will certainly be producing some guidance for branches on the use of social media.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it certainly does. In terms of the policies, will individual branches be allowed to set their policies based on the lessons that they've learned, or are you going to put an overarching policy in place?
No, we can only give you guidance on that matter because it's not part of our governance handbook structure. So it'll be guidelines, good practice, best practice, and then we would expect the branches to adopt that and implement it.
Thank you.
But in terms of what we discussed last night, I think what would be of value is, rather than everybody doing their own bit, can we start to pull together that best practice, the understanding? And I think, and I did touch base with our new chairman of the IE committee last night following our conversation, and I know that he would be interested to hear from you and see how we can learn from your experiences. Thank you.
No, thank you.
So, good question. Next one, please.
Good afternoon. Alan Weston, Wokingham Woodley branch. We are a very small branch, and something actually you said just now a few minutes ago has got us worried a little bit. It's conflict of interest, and when it comes to auditing, can a committee member be an auditor as well, i.e. the vice chairman or chairman? Can they be the auditor?
My learned advisor tells me no.
Yeah. It's going to make life rather difficult for a few of us, I think, now. Thank you.
Okay.
In the centre here.
We've got one here. Where you go? My name's Alan Dickens, Huyton, Roby and Liverpool. Sorry about this, Nick. Reference to a building that's placed in now at the present time, putting in for an extension, which is met the local authorities' agreements and everything else other than putting the contractors in. What's the present position on this?
I can't answer you from here. I can talk to you later, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to talk to Vicky and the team. But I'll come and see you later if that's all right.
Okay, thank you. In the middle.
Mr. President, members of the panel, my name is Peter Ramraker. I'm chairman of the City and Central London branch. I'm encouraged, and my colleagues are encouraged, to hear that the association is actively looking at how protected characteristics are addressed. And it's really, really something that needs concentrated attention. My particular concern is, well, in 2 things. One, in mental health, and secondly, in getting more youth involved in committees and other public aspects of the association work. I wondered whether thought has been given to creating a champion, say a mental health champion for the association or for areas of the association, and youth champions, so that on committees of the association you have visible representation of the areas that you're seeking to address.
John?
I can start off with, in terms of the Welfare Committee and the work that we're doing, certainly on mental health, as Nick alluded to, that has been a pilot piece of work that's going on. We're not, I don't believe, capable of taking on any real wider mental welfare work beyond that. That is not what we're set up to do. On the youth side, I absolutely agree. It would be good to get the youth involved, but I'm not sure that we can start pulling them into the committees. Having youth champions on each committee, I think is going to start diverting attention. We've got RAF youth. We do have a focus on the youth within the association, and I think we need to keep it within that area. I don't know whether you've got any additionals.
Well, I have seen some really good examples of best practice where branches have really integrated with their local RAF Air Cadet squadrons and have brought members of the squadron on to shadow the committee members and act as the chair and treasurer and secretary, and then to hand over a meeting to them to enable them to actually chair the meeting, do the treasurer's report, do the secretary's report, and gain valuable skills and insight into how an organisation works that will help them in later life. So I think there are lots of ways we could integrate with the youth members of the RAF family, and I think I'd encourage all branches to engage with their RAF Air Cadet squadrons and look at ways of working with them to bring those young people on board.
You may be interested that the House of Commons Defence Committee are taking an open session in June on mental welfare of service personnel and veteran service personnel, and one waits to see what might fall out from that with respect to broader government interest, particularly into mental welfare. Yes, please.
Sorry. Neil Millett, representing Luxembourg branch. I noticed from the demographic on the membership, and it's almost following on from this previous question, that there is the forgotten generation, if you like, between the 40 and 60, where the membership is the lowest of all. While appreciating the efforts made to encourage young people to join the association, I can sort of foresee a little bit of a problem coming up when we don't have the members in that area to take over from the current, dare I say, ageing population of committee members. So are there going to be any focus on trying to attract more from this particular age group?
Well, to be honest, the focus is right across the spectrum. You're absolutely right. Due to the relatively poor performance we had in recruiting over a number of years, that is where the black hole is, and that is going to drift through for a number of years. The problem is not as bad as it was, but I think that was where the worst of the gap sat. Now, yes, we are recruiting people into that area, but I don't think you'll ever overcome that hump completely. And that, as you say, then does give you concerns, because it's within that age group that you're getting most of the people who become officers of the various branches.
I think the other thing that we've been doing is going down to the command courses and making sure we try and recruit those people coming up at sergeant, flight sergeant level, moving through from flight lieutenant onwards. Those are the people that historically is the black hole because of their service period. So I know David Prowse and subsequently Dal have worked quite hard in addressing those. And although there's a dip there, if you remember, in some of those age groups, we only had 500 or 600 people to start with. On average, we've now got over 2,000 people in those age groups. And there is a continual drive to recruit into that black hole. And some of the work that the station officers do, particularly on the stations, is to target that group of people that are least likely to be members of the association, who are in that 40 to 50 age range. Because you're right, when they get to 60, 65 and start to become active volunteers in the branches, we won't have as many as we really need.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No, we've got one over here.
Go ahead with your question, please.
Tom Bully, Chairman, Shetland Branch, Britain's most, RAF's most northerly branch. Like the previous gentleman, we're a small branch bumbling along trying to survive. Now, I've been shocked by what the Secretary-General told us this afternoon, especially about honoraria. Now, our branch gives honoraria to a couple of people for the extra work that they do. If we're not allowed to do that, we could lose them. What do we do?
Pay them their reasonable expenses. That's what you should do. Don't pay them honoraria, pay them their reasonable expenses for doing the role. And that's what we should be doing across the board, not paying honoraria, because it's an expected payment. And it's just that, it's a payment, not the expenses incurred in undertaking their role. So by all means, pay their reasonable expenses that they provide you clear information they've incurred to undertake the role. That's the only way around it.
And the second thing our branch would like to know, all these people you're taking on and all the staff down at Leicester, where does the money come to pay their wages?
Well, can we just have a statement of fact? You saw very clearly the presentation of the employee weighting across the piece. And I think the colour that you've implied there with respect to all of these staff that are being taken on gives a magnitude which is perhaps unfair to load when one looks at the totality of those who are employed by the charity. Now, there is a question to answer, absolutely, but I think you added a little bit of colour which is perhaps inappropriate with respect to the weighting. So over to the...
Well, there was no disrespect
No, I didn't
intended,
say there was. I
but
said
the attitude I show a lot of other delegates here are saying, well, we stand out in the rain with our tins rattling and going round and selling raffle tickets. Is it to pay for staff wages or is it for welfare?
Right. Can we have a clear answer, please, with respect to the number of staff that, in terms of the funding, and then move swiftly on? Thank you. Okay.
Well, as I alluded to earlier, we need to recruit high-quality people to deal with all the issues that are going on. You have a choice as an association. The position we were in a few years ago, where we were in terminal decline, doing very little, or, and I'll guarantee, if we start to lay people off and go back to that position again, which will reduce our overheads and reduce the wages cost, I will bet my pension on you will go back into decline. It needs the team there. You don't get something for nothing. And that's why we have got a team. It's actually a pretty small team. It's only 150 people, full-time equivalents, 75% of which are tied up providing our welfare support, the activities in our respite facilities, the hotels, and are out doing the work in the areas. So we have a very small group of people. And I do get frustrated with this because you cannot just assume that things are going to happen. We have to have the quality of people and in a reasonable number to deliver what this charity needs.
Can I just add one other thing? Don't forget that figure that appeared in the presentation, about 87 pence in the pound raised is spent on welfare. And that's a significant amount of money for every pound.
Good.
Anne Higgs, I'm the membership secretary for Aphrodite branch in Cyprus. It's just a request, really. The resolutions, could they possibly be sent out a little earlier? Because you have to email them to us, and we didn't get them in time to discuss them with our members. We only had time to discuss them at committee level, and we would like to be able to discuss them with members before we come to conference. And can I just say thank you for all the hard work that you all do. It is appreciated.
Thank you.
Noted. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Muriel Simpson, Oldham Branch. Mr Bunting touched on the fact that RAF now has an updated website, and we are encouraged to start collecting for wings at the beginning of the year, a 12-month thing. There's been many a time I've gone on to RAF and things have been out of stock. I don't know if there's problems with the suppliers, but it does leave us in a bit of a bad situation if we're trying to fundraise in January on the wings appeal and we can't get the stock for the stalls that we have. So will the supply be a bit better for the Raffertrad website?
Our new website came on after then, so I'll park that one. But the one thing that everybody talks to me about is ducks. Ducks. I think that is the correct pronunciation, isn't it, Taff? Ducks. And this year we have 3 new ones. And they were released into the Pacific Ocean by the Chinese about 14 weeks ago. And they got out about 3 weeks into the Pacific Ocean and sank. So we had to order some more. And they arrived at Tilbury last week. And I was presented with 3 on Monday. So the ducks are now in. So after they sunk, which wasn't really helpful, you'd have thought they'd have floated, wouldn't you, really? But anyway, we've now got the ducks in, and I think off the top of my head, one is a biplane, one's an F-35, and the other's a Spitfire. So the ducks are in. So. That's the only branch in the country it isn't.
Yeah, no. I go on a website in January to try and order stuff for the branch's stall. Yeah. And I'm getting out of stock, stock. It's not specifically ducks.
Okay. The new website was launched in March. So if you've got a problem since then, can I talk to you offline? Because you shouldn't have had any problems since March.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, the RAF 100 badges, we were having a dinner to market. We couldn't get those until actually they arrived the day before the dinner because we were having problems getting the RAF 100 badges. We knew that this anniversary was coming up, so shouldn't the supplies have been ready February, March, ready to launch out in April?
Thank you. I think they were, but I can check that for you as well.
Yes, please, on the front row.
Dave Chappell, Alnwick branch. Nick mentioned about leases between branches and clubs and headquarters. Do you have a generic lease that branches, clubs can use with headquarters?
My learned friend is telling me we do now. So if you'd like to speak to Vicky later on, I'm sure she'll take you through it.
Can I have a subsidiary question? Does that lease include the division of responsibilities between clubs and branches for the maintenance of the property?
My learned friend says me it does.
I am so pleased.
And Vicky is a lawyer, so she is a learned friend.
Yes.
Next question, please.
It's all done by magic, you see, Dave.
Yeah. Michael Dixon, Shoreham. Hi, Nick.
Hi, Mark.
I'm here. Hearing your presentation has made me quite nervous, actually, on do's and don'ts, you know. And I don't want to raise anything that may embarrass our present situation, of which you are quite well aware of. The only other thing is about, we've been currently allowing the welfare £50, maximum of £50 if when they go out and find doing their welfare thing, and they find a necessity to give £50. You know, their cash, nothing signed, but they are accountable to the chairman, or I presume she's getting in touch with the chairman saying, is that okay? I mean, is this legal or not now?
I think it'd probably be better, Malcolm, if we take that offline and get you and Elsa together with Marie, who's here from the welfare team. Is that all right?
Is all this do's and don'ts now in the Bible now, in the new financial, so our new financial person can
understand it. Yeah, I think let's take that offline, Michael, and deal with it.
I'll get back to you, Nick.
All right.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, we have time for one more question before we need to move on to the important business of resolutions.
Regarding the £50 limit, this was raised at Scottish Area Conference in Glasgow last year, when I asked the Director of Finance if we could scrap this if the branch funds were available. and they said subject to due diligence, there was no problem. To fill in a Form A for a microwave for a pensioner, drag out bank details, benefit statements, debts, everything else, and then go through the whole rigmarole of applying to the Ben Fund for a small sum is a nonsense. If the money is available in the branch funds, we were given permission to go ahead, subject to good common sense, and spend whatever was necessary to eradicate the problem immediately. It wasn't in writing, but I'm sure the regional representative for Northern Ireland backed me up at the time, as I recall.
It's not changed, but we'll take Michael through it, okay?
Right. Could I ask for some just clear
Yeah, it's not changed, it's not changed, but we'll take Michael through it separately.
So it's cleared up, so everybody's understanding. Right, sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Last question, please.
Chairman. Bob Latin, Morecambe and Lancaster. One problem we're facing, I think other people are facing, let me say, I admire what you're trying to do to keep us on the right state and now in terms of government. This is going to add an enormous load to continuity planning. Now, the scene I'm getting in our areas, we have people prepared to do and help. But if you say to them, how about taking over a role as a secretary, treasurer, you name it, sorry, I have not the commitment. I'm not prepared to give the commitment. I'm prepared to help whatever you want, but I'm not prepared to give the commitment. What's going to happen as a result of what we heard today is it's going to be even more difficult to find people to replace us. So that's the problem we're facing, and we'll all be facing in due course. Thank you.
That's understood, and perhaps if we look at what's potentially included in the resolutions, that may well be one of the routes to offload some of that pressure to allow capacity for folk to be able to deal with those issues. So I think let's leave that for the discussion on resolutions. But I can assure you that I have observed both the Chairman and the Secretary-General well aware of the pressure on branches and people who put themselves forward, and are very keen to ensure that Council does that which it can in order to reduce that workload and to come up with different options. Why? Because we can see it's there. This is not new, that which has been described today. This has been there for some time. The realisation that it is there, that perhaps is new, and the weight of responsibility and the personal responsibility that comes with that, we all need to understand where we sit, as I do too, being a volunteer and a trustee. But thank you for the point you've made. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. If I can invite you please to return to your chairs. So moving on to the adoption of the financial report. I noticed Phil Tagg got away very easily there. May I request a seconder for the financial report, please? Yeovil? Yep. Thank you very much. And we now move to the voting process, and the votes are now open. Thank you. Voting closed, and that is accepted 100%, Phil. So taking off your shoes and socks and working those numbers out has obviously worked. Well done. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if we might now move to the Chairman's report, may I request a seconder, please? Armourers Branch, virtually here. Thank you very much. And ladies and thank you. The voting is now open. And again, John, we got away with that one, 100%. Well done. Thank you very much indeed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, on to the resolutions. So, resolution number 1, and I will not read it out verbatim, but you can read it for yourselves, as you obviously have done when consulting with your branches. This has been seconded by Scotland and Northern Ireland Area Council, but I invite John Tisbury to propose. Thank you.
President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, John Tisbury, Chairman of and Delegate for Wales, Midland and South Western Area, and I'm proposing Resolution 1. Delegates received details of this resolution in their pack, and I'm sure that every one of you discussed the details of the resolutions for this conference in advance with every member of your branch and sought their views, so that during our discussions on this and other resolutions today, your views will reflect the input of all of the members of your branch. That's the number of members on the voting cards, if we've got voting cards. Not just your mates, not just your branch committee, not just those who were able to make it to the branch meeting where you sought their views, but everybody in your branch. Well, that's what Resolution 1 is about. Also, look around. It is shown in the reports forwarded to delegates that the association is blessed with 413 branches. And we were told earlier that there are 113 branches only here today. So where are the others? So what are the views of the members associated with all of those branches that are not represented here today? It would seem, therefore, that the views of a very small number of our members are involved in making decisions that will affect the future of the association going forward. Decisions that will impact on all members of the association, the majority of whom, it would appear, at the moment have no opportunity to make their views known as their branches have elected not to be represented here, or whose views have not been sought by their branch's delegate. Is that democratic? Is it not time to let every member have the opportunity to express their views? Now, Resolution 1 does not seek a decision on the way forward. It just seeks your approval that Central Council look into the matter of enfranchising all of our membership. It does not seek to prescribe how this should be done. It will be for Central Council, having considered all of the issues, to bring forward options for consideration to annual conference next year. Delegates, I would suggest that with the growth of the association, the increasing number of virtual branches, the increasing number of members who do not regularly attend branch meetings, and the reducing percentage of branches that choose to attend annual conference, it is time to review our structure to ensure that all members have a say on how our great association should move forward. And I therefore ask you most urgently to support Resolution 1. Thank you very much.
John, thank you very much indeed. And as Scotland and Northern Ireland have seconded, do you wish to speak? Yes?
President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Dick Trebbett, Bangor Branch Chairman, Northern Ireland Regional Chairman and Vice Chairman, Scotland and Northern Ireland area. I believe in democracy. The very idea that you can vote someone or something out as well as in appeals to me on every level. 2,500 years ago, the ancient Greeks came up with the idea, and being Greeks had a word for it, demokratia. Demos for the people and kratia for power. They did manage to operate as such for a couple of hundred years before being overthrown by the tyrants of the day. Since then, we've had kingdoms, empires, caliphates, dictatorships come and go. We've seen the rise and fall of fascism, communism, military hunters, and one-party states. Some of these still operate in various parts of the world today, but all of these systems have failed or will ultimately fail, and they will fail because of the will of the people. The very word democracy has fallen into disrepute in recent years due to oppression, manipulation, corruption, coercion, intimidation, and vote rigging, but a better system has yet to be found. When operated without fear or favour, it is a fine system. It's time we apply this principle to our own association. There may well be difficulties in bringing this about. We may well be assuming that the wider membership actually cares that they do not have a voice. But we can't ignore the fact
that our decisions are made by a very small percentage of the membership and may not always be in the best interest of the association. We can talk about this till we're blue in the face. The time has come to do something. A feasibility study into the practicalities, difficulties and projected costs of introducing a one-member, one-vote system of governance into the association is the best way forward. Scotland and Northern Ireland area seconds this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Costa Blanca branch would like to speak for the motion.
Good afternoon, Ken Booth, Costa Blanca branch. Mr. President, councillors, delegates and other attendees. The challenge of this resolution is to have the insight to update the present system of membership representation. It has quite old roots born of a system when the conference participation and communication were difficult and beset by limiting factors. You have to imagine in 1947 the impracticality of getting representation of 200,000 members, which we had in 1947, and accelerating. And those records taken and recorded in the face of considerable delay, to say nothing of the cost. But by far the largest obstacle to full individual participation then, which no longer prevails today, had to be problems in communication. Today, because of constraints of time, I am obliged to present you an analytical summation of the resolution based on averages, which just embraces the extremities from one end of a branch to another. So I will give you some very pertinent figures. Then, as Dacia says, you can check the mathematics. In round figures, the 112 delegates at the 217 conference represented 33% of our branches and 27,000 or 39% of our membership. But that representation is based on 100% of all members of a branch participating in voting. In reality, in between 45 and 50% of members attend AGMs, which therefore returns a maximum number of votes to approve or reject a resolution of about 15,000 of our membership. I spoke to one branch member today, one delegate, with 400 members in the branch, and I asked her how many attended the AGM. She said 20. So you work it out yourself. Anyway, that is just shy of 19% of our membership, that involvement in the voting. Even worse, and this really is terrible, in the event of a highly controversial resolution, a badly split vote could result in an outcome decided by just 50 plus 1% of the people voting that could be as low as 9,000 votes, or just under 12% of our members. These people voting on policy and administrative decisions that are going to affect our association for years to come. Quite frankly, I think that should knock your socks off. In my case, I bought these recently. These are 50th anniversary socks. But anyway, that's what they're worth. Now, in contrast, and so you can get a real flavour for this, if, as prescribed by this resolution, direct conference participation in voting were to be extended to each member of RAFA, then branch approval of resolutions, which is an age facet of the delegate system, would be redundant. That is not to say that delegates would be redundant at conferences. I said the delegate representation. Further, if it is, as is generally agreed by political pundits, that approximately 50% more people would take part in home-based voting than in the current venue-based voting, the main attraction being conveners. Thus, based on that, 62% of our members participating, the average number of members voting could be as high as 44,000. With the resolution being determined by, again, a minimum of 50 plus 1%, that would still return 25,000 votes, or 35% of our membership. That is over 3 times the current minimums or involvements that we have today. To my mind, and using a much abused modern phrase, it's a no-brainer, quite frankly. Before I close, I wish to remind you today of the efforts of the suffragettes. They achieved an act of general and extended enfranchisement in 1918, for which most of us in this room should be grateful and owe a debt of thanks. It was an achievement that, in addition to our very own Royal Air Force, is also in its centenary year. Accordingly, I would caution the males here present against mucking around with the now 19% female membership concepts of enfranchisement. You do so at your own peril. In summation, I would put it to you that we have both a moral and ethical obligation to modernise our conference voting system, and by utilising 21st century technology, move to an inclusive and individualised voting system, a system that is sympathetic to and reflects the rights of all of our members. That fulfills the democratic needs of each individual member of our association, including the future as well as the serving members of a modern Royal Air Force. Therefore, I commend this resolution to you.
Thank you, Ken.
I'll take my socks.
I do hope those socks were laundered and clean before you've been thrown on the stage. Now, we've had three very strong advocates for. Are there any other folk who would like to come forward to advocate for? At the moment, for, and then I'll deal with the against. For, there's one here. Please come forward.
Delegates, if you do wish to talk, please make your way down towards the front so we can see who wants to talk.
Mr. President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have any notes. I read these resolutions last night. I'm the chairman of the Armorers branch. I run a virtual branch. And my name's Martin Tangen. My apologies. It's the first time I've done this. I read this resolution last night, and it struck me that we live in the 21st century, and we have technology that when this association was set up, we didn't have. Dead simple. It was impossible to ask 200,000 people to rock up to a convention centre and cast a vote personally. Well, we had that same problem when we started our virtual branch. We have members all over the world. They were invited to an AGM in Leicester, and we had 25 people rock up. That's not enough. It's not 10% of our branch, so technically all of the votes cast at the AGM were void. So how did we come to a solution on this? We used technology. So we have piloted for the last 2 years something called Ballot Bin. It's free, it's available, it's on the internet, and it's fantastic for branches because your secretary can set up a ballot within this, send out emails to your membership who have a very, very specific code that they log into this. They read the subject that they have to vote on, and they select yes, no, A, B, C, whichever. The results of the vote are instant. The secretary gets an email from the company that gives them the result of the vote there and then. Everybody, no matter where they are in the world, gets to vote on branch matters. This is simple digital technology. Every branch could roll it out, and even the association could roll it out. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Everybody deserves a vote. Everybody deserves a say in this association. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So, of course, a potential solution, but not necessarily the resolution that was being discussed. But thank you for your contribution from your experience within your particular branch. Is there anybody else who would like to speak for the motion? Come forward, please.
I can throw my notes away because it's been said by most. Howard Provis, Barry Branch, Chair, Committee and members. It simply works. I'm a member of a fraternal organisation that went over to electronic voting several years ago, and we heard the phrases this morning, membership-led, digital capability and membership involvement. Since that decision by the Foresters to go digital, to go on the internet and let people vote independently, we've actually had an increase in membership participation. we've had an increase in the number of people putting themselves forward for office. So it actually works from my own experience. Thank you. I amend you to take the survey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would now like to invite anybody who would like to speak against the motion. Please come forward. As TAF invited, if anybody would like to speak against, any others speak against, please come forward so we can identify you. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Saunders. I'm Secretary of the City and Central London branch. There hasn't been any formal people designed to speak against it. Is that correct? In the same way that we had three people speaking for it initially.
It's delegate's choice.
No, right. In which case, as Secretary of a branch which has got 242 members, we are able to communicate with half of them by email, and the other half need to be communicated to by post. We make a communication to all of those individuals 3 to 4 times a year. And the result over the last 7 years where I've been in the chair as secretary is that I can name the 5% of individuals who are the usual suspects that come to the meetings, that come to the socials, that show themselves as being interested. So that tells me that out of my 240 people, I've probably got 20 that I can talk to, refer to, and get views from. But the other 220, they never respond to anything. This motion is saying to ask the council should undertake a study. Now that is work that has got to be done by the council. Work that I don't think is going to present any new information other than we have got roughly 5% of our membership who are interested in participation. The others have joined for a whole range of reasons, very often just to be part of the Royal Air Force family. And they look to the council to be the ones that finally come forward with the ideas and thoughts and so on. So my view is that I would prefer to see the council for the next year do things that have already been discussed as being necessary drive and direction in all the areas of membership, in funding, whatever it might be. This study, I don't think, will show up anything new. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your view. And I assume because nobody else is standing at the front of the room that nobody else would wish to speak against the motion. Is that correct? Yes. Therefore, may I invite, please, Alan Opie to come forward to speak on behalf of council.
President, ladies and gentlemen, Air Commodore Alan Opie. I'm representing council and I'm speaking for the resolution. This resolution asks council to undertake a study on the feasibility of all members having a right to vote on association elections and resolutions through a plebiscite. Council welcomes this initiative proposed by 2 area councils, Wales, Midlands and South West, and Scotland and Northern Ireland. The shape and size of our membership has changed significantly over the last few years. We've recruited 28,000 members in the last 4 years alone to take our total, as you've seen, from 58,000 to 72,000. More than a quarter of our members are currently serving in the Royal Air Force. And as you have heard from Air Marshal Young, many of them are deployed throughout the world and working to a high operational tempo. That means that they do not get the opportunity to contribute to and vote upon the issues faced by their association. Similarly, many non-serving members are not always able to contribute to and vote upon the association's governance issues. Whilst the attendance by branches at conference has remained steady in recent years, at around 30% of the total branch numbers, this is not fully representative of the membership of the association. It can be argued that all branches should attend conference. However, the highest level of branch attendance was back in 2000, when the proportion peaked at 58%. The association's values, vision and mission, as presented by our chairman earlier today, cannot be achieved if we do not strive to engage with all members of the association. The key question is, how can we engage with every member if their branch does not attend the conference? This proposal seeks to explore how we can best do this. Members of organisations voting on matters of governance is, as we've heard, not unique. Many of us here today are invited as individual members of other organisations to vote on the governance issues of the day. As a membership organisation, it would not be right if we did not look for the best way to involve all our members in making our key decisions. This proposal from the two area councils to undertake a review and conduct a plebiscite, a direct vote, is welcomed by council, and consequently we ask all delegates here present to vote for the resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Alan. John, as you proposed, do you wish to exercise your right of reply? Obviously, yes.
President, delegates, John Tisbury, Chairman and Delegate for Wales, Midland and South Western Area, exercising right of reply. I'm sure that Council will be grateful to all those who have spoken on this resolution, either for or against. However, in closing, I think I should re-emphasise that this resolution is not looking to change anything at the moment. All it is aiming to do is to allow Council the opportunity to review our current processes. It is an enabling resolution, and I again ask for your support to enable the Association to review how it can capture the view of all of our members and remain truly democratic in the years ahead. Please support Resolution 1. Thank you.
John, thank you. Conference, I now invite you to vote with respect to Resolution number 1. And I'm waiting for the slide. Voting is now open. And with a vast majority there, 82% for, that motion is carried. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to resolution number 2, this one raised by the Northern Area Council and seconded, I understand, by South East and Eastern. And I invite Heather Little to speak for the motion. Thank you.
President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Heather Little speaking on behalf of Northern Area Council. This conference resolves that Council examines and reviews the continued individual charity registration of branches. Vis-a-vis, branches become legally part of the association under a single charity registration, consulting with regulators as appropriate. Reporting back its findings, along with any details of any proposed changes, if appropriate, to the Association's governance documents and administrative structure to affect the findings to Annual Conference 2019. There have been a number of discussions today about the regulatory burden placed on branches, including but not limited to GDPR, health and safety laws, for example. There have been a number of potential solutions offered to alleviate concerns in that area. In essence, by supporting this resolution, you would be providing your approval for Council to review, assess and make recommendations for your approval and consideration at conference in 2019. Northern Area Council therefore respectfully asks that you vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Heather, thank you. And Chalky, do you wish to speak as seconder?
Chalky White, speaking on behalf of the South and Eastern area. Get round your tongue. Area councils had the advantage, for want of a better expression, of hearing Nick give all that spiel about the level of responsibility you have to accept in this day and age 5 weeks ago. And I said to him at the time, if you say that to all our branches out there, you're going to lose half your committees overnight. It's a fact of life that we have to do this, we have to face it, but we're going to have to go into gently. Hence, we put forward this resolution to conference in order to examine where we actually stand on this. Is it still an advantage to be separate charities, or would it be an advantage to be a single charity? We don't know. I don't think even Central Council or Nick himself knows an answer to it. The Charities Acts have changed so often over the last 50 years. Others have jumped every time they've changed it and got themselves in a right old mess. I don't need to quote who they are, you all know, but please support this motion.
Thank you, Chalky. Would anybody else like to speak for the motion? Yep.
President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, John Tisbury, delegate for the Wales, Midland and South Western area, supporting Resolution 2. My area council, having considered Resolution 2, are of the view that Central Council should indeed review the need for each branch to be independently registered with the Charity Commission. Many of our branches find the bureaucracy involved with the dealing with the Charity Commission onerous, and indeed in many cases leave it to the area office to submit returns, etc. In addition, the fact that each branch is an individual charity discourages some members from standing for committee posts, as they do not wish to take on the responsibility of trusteeship. Many delegates who have been coming to these things as long as me will recall that in the past all branches operated under the auspices of the central charity number and everything worked well. So there is little to fear if we were to return to how things were. As with Resolution 1, this resolution is just to request the Central Council to have a look at the issue and to report back next year. And I encourage Conference to support Resolution 2 to enable that to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else for? Yep.
Chris Hill, Gloucester branch. President, delegates, everybody else. I'm here to support the proposal, but with one further thought from my AGM. We are blessed at Gloucester with some experienced charity trustees, and we comply with all the charity requirements explained in previous slides. So I'm very happy that we are a charity, and that enables me to claim a significant amount in gift aid, large part of which goes to the Wings appeal. My current running total for gift aid owed to us by HMRC for this calendar year is over £870. I expect this to be much more by the end of the year. If we were not a registered charity, that would be much more difficult. And I urge the Council to consider maybe a hybrid solution. for the organisation, similar to the one perhaps Samaritans have been through this process 5 years ago and decided to have a hybrid solution, recognising those branches in Samaritans that were well-run charities and those who couldn't cope and didn't want to be. And I think the RAF could be blessed with coming up with that solution. Whatever you do, please don't follow the Church of England.
Thank you, Chris. So I take it, Chris, you are not suggesting an amendment, but something to be considered while doing this work. Correct. So thank you very much. Would anybody else like to speak for the motion? In that case, I invite those who may wish to speak against the motion to come forward.
President, Mr Chairman, Central Council, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Phillips, Tamworth Branch 748. I'm asking you to vote definitely against this resolution. As a branch, you've been told you are a charity in your own rights. You have your own rights and your own charity number. If registered to a national charity number, you would have only be a pawn in one big family. If registration numbers were to lose, you would lose all your rights, you would lose all your finance, all your own decisions, and most of all your assets. It's a roundabout way, which we call in the finance business asset stripping. Sorry, but that's what it is. This conference, a few years ago, proposed that we have an RAFA future. That included amalgamating all the charities within the RAFA under one roof. One of the reasons why they could be asking you to do away with your charity number is that they couldn't do that with a load of other little charities underneath it. Many years ago, you must remember that we had a situation where the national organisation was in serious trouble. We were begged, but most of us had already got our own charity numbers in them days, but we went round as area regional people, begging people to join the Charities Commission and take their own registration number, which we did, which, thank goodness, along with going out and saying to every member that was ex-RAF, please join as life members, so as you can pay me £76, so as it can go towards saving this organisation. This organisation now wants to take back everything you've done, everything you've achieved over them years. I'm begging you, stop and think. No to this resolution and keep your own branch independence.
Tom, before you depart the stage, as a point of order, could you define for me who the they is in your inference of they wish to take it away from you?
Well, I'm looking at the the RAF Association want to drag us all into one.
I understood this was a proposal by the Northern Area Council. This has been proposed by Northern Area Council.
Yeah.
Are you referring to Northern Area Council?
No, I'm referring to the fact that if you look at this and this actually takes place, then Central Council will be taking charge of every branch there is.
Right, so you're not inferring that this is Central Council wishing to do this. This proposal is from the Northern Area Council.
Right, yeah, okay. We're on a technicality, yes.
No, I'm afraid it's a point of order.
Yeah, all right.
But I accept your point speaking against the motion, but I do believe that one should be articulate and clear that this proposal has come from an area council and is supported by another area council. This is not coming from Central Council.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Would anybody else like to speak against the motion? In that case, I turn to the Northern Area Council. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you over there. Under the lights, we can't see you. Please come up and speak.
Probably the lights bouncing off my tape. Sorry about this. Bob Hunt, Chairman of the European Area. I neither wish to speak for or against this motion, Mr. President, colleagues, but to emphasise that, of course, those branches that reside outside of the borders of the United Kingdom do not come under the Charities Act. We are not registered as you are. We are required to register individually within the countries in which we are based. So please, if this motion is passed, with the team who are conducting the review, take that into account and do not include us in the final figures. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Your point well made. I apologise for not being able to see very clearly. There are very bright lights over there. Would anybody else like to speak against the motion? In that case, may I invite the right to reply, should you wish to exercise? Oh, Council needs to say something, don't they? Council. So that's Chris, I think. Is Chris Goss?
Pleased to know I have notes, but I do got my socks on, so they won't be coming out the top pocket. Right. Mr. President, conference. Chris Goss representing Council and speaking for the resolution. I ask you to look at what's on the screen there, as this resolution asks Council to examine and review the continued charity registration of branches, branches being legally an integral part of the association. Council welcomes this initiative proposed by the Northern and the South East and Eastern Area Councils. In the 1990s, the Charity Commission moved that branches should be separately registered charities within their governance documents, being that of the association itself. At that time, this was an uncontroversial position to adopt. However, as we have seen from the presentations today, especially one by the Secretary-General about an hour ago, the regulatory and legislative burdens facing branches today are much greater than it was 30 or more years ago. Branches are, in effect, micro-charities, yet they are subject to the same level of regulatory governance, or as we heard, burden, as the association itself, the association being a large charity. In the UK, we have all witnessed an increased level of scrutiny on charities to deliver their charitable objects. The Secretary-General and the Chairman have mentioned a few, and there are many other examples, as you well know, with more and more, no doubt, coming under scrutiny of the three charity regulatory bodies which we are governed by in the UK. Then, as Bob did say, we have the breadth of regulation affecting our overseas branches. Enough said. Council recognises the growing and possibly intolerable burden that all of this is placing on those members who willingly step forward and volunteer to take on the many committee roles vital in running a successful branch. Equally, Council also notes how few members then step forward to take this on when that person steps down. This inevitably puts the future of the branch at risk, with all too often the result being the branch becomes an RMG or closes. The branch is an important part of the camaraderie of its members, by and for the members, that contributes much of, and I quote this, for the welfare and charitable means, unquote, of the association, and that was delivered on a day-to-day basis. The branch, therefore, helps to fight the loneliness and the isolation faced by a number of our members. The association's values, vision and mission, as presented by our Chairman of Council earlier today, cannot be achieved if we do not strive to reduce the growing admin burden of being a micro-charity on those thousands of members who willingly volunteer to support the branch network. If we do not do so, then the future of the branch contract itself is at threat. This proposal from the two area councils to undertake, again I emphasise, a review and to make recommendations to annual conference next year is welcomed by Council, and therefore Council urges all delegates here today to vote for this resolution. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Heather, do you wish to exercise your right to reply? No? Declined. Thank you very much indeed. So, ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to the vote. Voting is now open. Thank you. That resolution is carried with an 81%. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, to resolution number 3, and I invite at this stage a vote with respect to resolution number 3 should conference wish to remove the dagger. If successful, the resolution would be debated. So is there anybody who should wish to second the removal of the dagger? Question. Dunstable Branch would wish to do so. Therefore, we now move on to a vote of whether to remove the dagger or not. So, voting is now open. Therefore, a simple majority was required to vote to remove the dagger. A simple majority has been achieved. Consequently, the dagger will be removed, and this resolution will be debated. So, is there a seconder for this resolution? Dunstable Branch. Dunstable Branch as a seconder. Consequently, may I invite the proposer to come and speak on behalf of this?
President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Heather Little speaking on behalf of Northern Area Council. I'm not entirely sure what I can say about this one in all honesty, other than what it states, in that the conference resolves that AR 811 from the Governance Handbook will be withdrawn from the area rules and so remove a duty of action for area councils that is not practicable, because it's already covered elsewhere. So I urge you to vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Would the Dunstable Branch representative as seconder wish to speak on behalf of this motion? No, apparently. Would anybody else like to speak for this motion? Well, I assume that delegates would have had all the resolutions before pitching up here. I'm afraid one does expect that resolutions would have been read by branches, discussed with branch members, and therefore an understanding gained before pitching up here. So, a bit of a black mark there. Right, have we had enough time to digest that? Right, would anybody else like to speak for the motion? No? Would anybody like to speak against the motion? John, please come forward.
President, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, John Tisbury, delegate for Wales, Midland and South Western area, opposing Resolution 3. My area council are of the view that it is the responsibility of the area council to, among other things, oversee the activities of branches and clubs that fall within its purview. Area council should be monitoring all activities of their branches and clubs, and that includes the financial activities of those branches and clubs. That is not to say that they have to be skilled auditors or financial experts. The association has within its structures those individuals who can be called upon if required. But councillors during their branch visits will pick up on irregularities or concerns, which they will raise during their reports to the area council, or, if urgent, direct to the area director for subsequent update at the next area council meeting. AR 8 brackets 11 close brackets gives the area council the authority to question financial concerns, and through bylaw 25(5 the authority to call upon a more detailed examination of the accounts by experts. My area is against this attempt to reduce the authority of area councils and ask conference to vote against this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Would anybody else like to speak against? Yes, please come forward.
Mr. President, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Paul Sharp from the Shrewsbury branch. Not so much speaking against as to point of order, because I'm confused. Yeah, please excuse me this. I've been to delegate a few times, but I'm confused. And it goes back to the way this resolution has been brought back in, because you quite clearly stated, Mr. President, that it had been daggered, and then that we would have a vote. But I don't believe that many people in this room understood what the dagger meant or what they were voting for or against, because nobody actually said what for or against meant. And also, it quite clearly says in the paperwork here that for the dagger to be removed, there shall be a 2/3 majority, and I didn't see a 2/3 majority. So my point is, we are where we are now, but can I suggest in future, if this takes place, that we clearly explain to the members what a dagger means, and also what a yes or no vote means, because I think a lot of people meant to vote against, but didn't understand what against meant.
Yeah, just to reply to you, there is a typo in there. It is a consent of conference to remove it, which is a simple majority, so that is my fault. I take that hit because I should have picked that up.
I'll have a pint later, Taff, that's fine.
That's okay. But the dagger was explained by the President by saying you invited a vote on Resolution 3 to remove the dagger. If successful, number 3 would be debated. And that is clearly stated in the RPs, which hopefully you would have all read in your conference brochure. We've had the dagger before, and it's just, if it's dagger, we as the ACC considered that it's been debated enough, it's taken up enough conference time, and we leave it up to conference then to say, do you want to debate it again or not?
In which case, I will leave you in peace, sir, but I was just confused by that part of the process and also the documentation that was written here.
And I recognise the point you make about communication, clarification and articulation with respect to the paperwork, and that's a good point, well raised. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak against? Please come forward.
Ken Booth, Costa Blanca. I'd like to give you a little advice from my experience. I was a financial controller for a very large group of hotels in the United Kingdom, and the largest fiddle in their area of hospitality was in bars and liquor. If you do away with what's been proposed, and I back John Tilsbury on this, you'll be opening a mare's nest, because things will take place that it takes great perception to perceive by experience of going through finding those out. And the biggest problem with it is collusion, where you have a bar member in a club colludes with the chairman of the club, or even worse, colludes with the treasurer of the branch association branch. Now, I actually do believe, and I can't say no more than this, you're actually debating the wrong motion here, what you should be looking at, and perhaps for the next meeting, and therefore you need to, if you take my heed and caution, you should vote against this. What you should be looking at is, in fact, the decision that was taken to do away with the area treasurers. That's what you should really be looking at, because it would be the responsibility of the area treasurer to pursue such investigations and to prevent fraud. That is my advice to you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ken, and I hope your socks are back on now. Is there anybody else who would like to speak against? In that case, may I ask the council representative, Phil, to come forward and give council's view?
Phil Tagg, Honorary Treasurer, representing Council, speaking for the resolution. When this clause was inserted by the task group in developing the area regulations, the role and function of area councils had developed by custom and practice, with some area councils undertaking tasks which others did not. In an attempt to standardise the rules and functions, the task group included a review of branch accounts, which hitherto some area councils had been undertaking. However, following the comprehensive review of all branch and branch club accounts by the finance team, it is acknowledged that not all area councils have the requisite skills to undertake this task. Council asks all delegates present to vote for the resolution.
Understood. Thank you. And Northern Area, Heather, a right of reply is yours, should you wish to exercise it.
Heather Little, speaking on behalf of Northern Area Council. Thank you, Phil, for that response. I'd also like to refer you to Rule 25 in the Governance Handbook, number 4, which is about the responsibilities of area councils, and it states in there all the responsibilities of area councils, which includes to investigate and, when necessary, report to the council on the affairs of any branch, including, in particular, the financial affairs of a branch, and any case where, in its opinion, a branch should be closed. However, the responsibility, and I refer back to Phil's point, the responsibility of reviewing the financial affairs of a branch should be with the area director and the finance team at headquarters. Therefore, not only is this AR 811, it's no longer practicable because of the skill sets that are involved with council, but equally, it's also it's already covered in 25.4 in the Governance Handbook. So I urge you to support this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For the point of clarity, the motion is, or the resolution is, that this conference resolves that AR8 brackets 11 close brackets be withdrawn from area rules and so remove a duty of action for area councils that is not practical. That is what you, ladies and gentlemen, are about to vote upon. When we're ready with the voting, Jobby. Voting is now open. requires a simple majority, which it has achieved very simply. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the resolutions for this year's conference. Now, we are somewhat ahead of the drag curve. Are the rafflers... Is Warrant Officer Hayward in the room? Are you prepared to come forward and give your presentation slightly earlier than planned? Very good. Isn't it wonderful having a station warrant officer on your side? Thank you, Mr. Hayward. Over to you.